ahead. It's 11 o'clock. I'm going to close the poll and share the results there. So it looks like right now we got a lot of people who aren't using advanced UOM. So I think this is a good lead in for you to educate people on a new piece of technology.
All right, a little bit about ServiceSteel. So we have 5 locations in basically 4 districts. One district division has 2 sites. So we're around the Midwest. There is a couple different companies called ServiceSteel. So if you're Googling, trying to find us, we're the Van Pelt company. It says it in really little letters down there. And so we are a combination of, between the 5 sites, it goes between 90% distribution, 10% manufacturing, to flip-flop the other way with 95 to 99% manufacturing and almost no distribution. So between the 5 sites, there's a lot of different ways of servicing our industry. So the Detroit site happens to be the 90% distribution version, and so this is one of the sites that we're going live with in less than 90 days. So this is kind of, they used to have some product here. So we do a lot of tubing. So you see some of the types of product we buy from mills and service centers, other service centers, and then we'll have bundles of materials like this that we would then either resell or cut to length. And so we have some really big customers and some that are, you know, mom and pop shops. So a lot of variety there and a lot of industries that are served. So I'm going to minimize that. So what we were looking at as a typical customer, we would typically sell, especially for Detroit, we would typically sell footage to a customer. So we may buy a whole bunch of material from a mill. We would have it inventoried, and we may have an inventory location. We have all warehousing, a lot of warehousing space, and then these part numbers, because we're selling footage, you know, per part, you know, this one happens to be it's 240 inches. You probably can't see that, it's really small, but basically it's a 20-foot part. And I hadn't worked in an industry like this previous to this, so it's kind of a new change for me to get used to. What we did last year is we actually had our Epicor partner go and make, there was over a dozen customizations for handling we called it a second unit of measure. So, and I know that other competitors and companies like us have done that. So basically you line up a bunch of UD fields and you say, okay, well, I have 100 foot that I'm selling, but it's 5 pieces. So you have another item here that says how many pieces you actually have out of that footage. I've seen this in the past for like wood board footage type of example. Now that I see what this can do, that would be a good example for board footage. I would imagine plastics and foam, and there's probably all kinds of types of usages for this. So one of the part numbers that I have set up is not this one, but so I want to give you an example here if I can find my PO screen. So for us, it's mainly an inventory item. That's not the run. So after we purchased this, we were able to strip off literally over a dozen customizations. So this is an example part. So this is a PO I have for my vendor. I have a line item here that does have the attributes active, and then this line up here does not. So this is a standard part number like you would have before. I have 1,000 feet. I have, unless I do the math and look at the length, I really have no idea how many pieces that is out of that 1,000 feet that I'm ordering. On this part, again, we have that in the description, but on the attributes tab, what I have is a screen here that says I'm ordering 50 pieces at this unit length, and then that will give me a calculation here of what I've entered versus the PO quantity on the main line item. And I can change this pieces, and I save that, and it's going to update this quantity. And so you don't have to do the calculation in your head all the time. And so now it's showing me that I have a 20-foot difference compared to what I have on the line. So, and I say, yeah, this is what I want. If I save that like that and go back, then it gives me a nice prompt to say, hey, you have a difference. Do you want to update our quantity? And I'm going to say yes in this case. And so now my quantity is going to go down from 1,000 to 980. So that dual unit of measure is really what we were looking for. And this is that attributes tab. And so this attributes tab is all over the place. Let's go to, I'll just do a receipt entry so you can kind of see the receipt side. Do I have that approved? No, not yet. Okay, thank you. Okay. So I'm just going to do, yeah, I don't think I have a pack list on this, right? No, I don't. So I'm going to make a new pack slip. And then once I go to the line item, this is line 2. So this brings in the 980 automatically. We have lots as well. So let me create a lot. And then the attribute side, I can go to that. It's going to bring up my heat. And then my attribute tab is going to come up. So here's my, it defaults to the PO attributes, right? So I can say, well, I didn't get 49, I only got 48. And so I can count pieces instead of trying to calculate that whole footage thing. Or in this case, maybe I do 52, maybe they sent extra, and which apparently happens quite a bit in our industry. And so now I'm receiving over the quantity, and so it tells me that I'm over the quantity, and that in our industry, that's okay, I guess. So I'll save that. Now, I do have a support call in. So between kinetic and advanced unit measures, I definitely feel like a beta user. I'll say that. I've got dozens and dozens of support tickets in for both of these. The advanced unit measure module just came out, I believe, last fall. And so it's pretty new. The one support case that I was working with an agent on, he kind of alluded to the PCID phase in, and which scared me a little bit because that was a lot of different revisions over many different updates. And so I think it's been a little bit better than the PCID rollout, but they're still adding as they go. So there really should be a catch like the PO had to say, okay, what am I updating here? There is one. It's very late in the whole game, so it's here now, and I want to say yes. So I'm going to update this line item. So now I have I'm receiving 1040 by the attributes. So now I have that in place. Let's go look at my inventory on this. And part tracker. And you get to see the new kinetic version. So if I come to my activity tab, there's a new function here. So the bins function is here, right? So I just received this one is the one I just received. If I go to my inventory attributes now, it should show. It did not. Okay, that must be a bug. Works in Classic. So if I come to my bins and I find my receiving bin with my lot that I just created, this then has a attribute set, and it has your on hand, but it also tells you the number of pieces. So a slightly different, in this case, you can see I have a 7500 here and 300. I don't know why that's negative, honestly. And so if you see a few of these, I can actually have different lengths. So here I have 100 feet and 180 feet, and this is a 20 footer and this is a 10 footer. So this is kind of what you can do. The other option that we're going to be using is to, once we do some cutting, we'll put drops back in with the shorter unit, shorter length, and so those drops will show up with their own length that way. So this is kind of cool for how we do processing of parts. So that's the part tracker side, and again, this is, I don't think that this tab is available unless you have the advanced unit measure. That's my understanding. So then, again, the functionality is pretty broadly used. If I go to my job entry, I've got a couple jobs here. So on your jobs, you can, now we've kind of determined we're going to do cut jobs in pieces, so that's kind of how we work right now anyway, but the option is there to do an attribute set. So you could actually make a material like this. I could actually make that as the primary part that I'm making instead of a cut part, and I could actually just define it as a different length. So instead of 20 foot, I could cut it to 10 foot and put it back in stock. So there definitely are things like that that you could do and have that attribute length be 10 foot instead of 20 foot. I didn't want to close that. Sorry. You can tell I don't present all the time, so. The other thing on jobs, here's a different job that I have, same cut part number, kind of a generic part. If I go look at this part, so I've set up a kind of a classic. This is a 12-inch part, right? And then my materials. Now the number of pieces really doesn't make sense for us here, because this is a 12-inch part out of a 20-foot length, right? So basically we've just added a kerf and saw kerf and a gripping area to the overall quantity per parent to get that. So that's kind of how a bill of material would look like. And so if I go back to the, okay. So the other piece of the puzzle for people on our boat, so now I've got these in inventory and wrong one, issue material. So now I want to issue this to a job. 7-3, I think is my job. I can issue in pieces, so this is really nice from a service center style of operation, that I can come in here and I can put in, I don't know, whatever this is. It's 11 pieces. Yeah. Nope, must be 6. There we go. So I've added issued an extra piece, and it automatically calculates my inches that I'm doing. So I've got 1,250 required. But again, that may be a partial piece per job, right? So I want to issue these in a set number of pieces. So our customizations that we had built would not do this math. We had to do this math ourselves. So this is a huge advantage for us as far as doing this calculation work and not having to do it. So hopefully it reduces errors and makes for cleaner inventory. So these are things that are advantages this module. So at this point, a couple other areas. If you come into quoting, attributes are available in the quote side, sales orders. So if you come in here, there's an attributes tab here. So again, I can quote it, and I can quote to a specific length. Even though I have a 20-foot part, typical, I can quote it as a 10-footer. And then, I can let operations figure out if they're cutting that, or if they have it out of inventory, or, how they're going to do that. And so that's nice. Same thing for the sales order side, sales order entry. There we go. So if I enter a new line item for my 21214, it's my new favorite part number. So I have an attributes option right here. Yes. So, and I want 25 of these, right? So I'm going to save that. Yes. So again, I can enter pieces and then it'll calculate the quantity I need. So I want to go to, let me do my time. Doing all right. So I want to go behind the cover a little bit. And again, shipping, returning material. Returning material is the other one I wanted to show. So returning material. So here's my job that I had, and here's my operation. So I have overissued this, okay? So what I can do here is I want to return a drop. So, and this happens to be one that I entered. I can enter a new one if I need to. So this is 114 inches. And I'm returning, there's one piece here at 144 inches. So I'm actually returning this. It was a 20-foot length. I cut it up, and now I'm returning it as a drop to one of these watts. And I go, okay. Hopefully it doesn't error out. So now I've returned a drop back into inventory at its set length. So, and we do a lot of that in the different sites. So what setup is required, you might ask, since I can't hear you? So on the part master, there is a little bit of setup. There are some new fields. We have a bunch of custom fields here, but the new fields that came along with the attributes. So this track attribute, inventory attribute is one of the new fields. This dual unit of measure class is what we're using. That's optional. And then we have a class ID, and my screen's a little screwed up because of the customization stuff, but this is a dynamic attribute. So we just go here for right now. It took us a couple of tries back in February and March, April, that time frame to get this corrected. So this is kind of what the setup looks like for the class. So what I have is I have two items here. I have my unit length and my unit of measure. And so I definitely had help setting this up from our Epicor partner. Not very familiar with this overall yet. So we have just a unit length. I gave it a format. And then on the inventory tracking side, I set this up to be quantity. For the unit of measure side, again, I just have a base attribute is unit of measure, and I put this as a character field, and then the inventory tracking is set to unit of measure. So I do have select choices, demand, inventory, and supply. We have them all turned on right now, so I can use this in quoting and sales order entry. I can use this in inventory, and I can use this at the PO level. So there are some options there. So that is kind of how our class is set up. There are a whole lot of other things you can do here. We haven't delved into any of these other things down here. The help for some of the Epicor help has much more detailed items. So if you had a coil and you wanted to split it, and they had master sheets, and cutting up master sheets, and they have all kinds of good examples in the help. So I thought that was good on Epicor's part. And then the other piece of the puzzle we have set up is this dual unit of measure. And so in addition to our normal unit of measure, this is the second one that we have set up and are being called out. So, and we have feet, pounds, and pieces called out. And so that's just again, and it's specified as a dual unit of measure. So if I come So there's a class type here that says dual. So that is, I think, comes along with the module. So, and then our typical unit measure class is still there. We have a custom one that our Epicor partner set up for us that has basically everything in that we would ever need. So the dual unit measure works with this to track the pieces is kind of how they interact as far as I understand it. So this is still our primary. If you go back to the part here, service steels are still our primary unit measure class, but now we've called out a dual unit measure class that gets us those piece fields active. So I haven't played around with this any other way. I do think that this is optional. I think you could make attributes like under the class ID without using the dual unit measure. I think that would be possible. I just, again, we set it up for our case, business case scenario. And again, it was new enough that had to fight through some bugs, and we just got it working and kind of left it. I do, there's been talk on the forums about revision tracking, inventory level revision tracking. I am convinced this could do that. I haven't tried to set it up, but based on a sales order, if you had an attribute for a revision, this is supposed to go all the way through MRP and part tran. I mean, it's very pervasive through the system, the module. And so I do think that you could do a inventory revision tracking if that was needed with this module. I also have in the past struggled with, sheet, like 8x12 sheet usage at a machine shop. And yeah, they would have probably loved this because they could have put sheets back in for drops and all kinds of stuff. They couldn't do any of that stuff they wanted to, and just kind of living with it. Industries like foam and extrusion, plastic extrusion, I don't know. There's just probably a ton of industries that I can see that would be interested in this. So, but it is kind of probably a niche area. So.
In the questions, we've got a handful of questions. There were a couple that were also posted in the chat window to you. So whenever you're ready for questions, you have a little backlog starting.
Okay, I'm ready. Yeah, read them off. That'd probably be better. I'm only seeing a couple, so maybe.
Not a problem. Ben Deco's over at Stellar has a question. How will backflush work with the advanced UOM, assuming not very well?
Yes, we are lot tracked, and so we do not use backflushing. And yeah, I can't imagine how that would work. I haven't even tried it. Right. Also, we haven't gotten into MRP yet. That's one. It's on a plan for one of the sites next year. So I haven't gotten into MRP as well, but that's supposed to work with the attributes. So.
Okay. Then Tammy Vanderhoevel had a question. Are you using standard costing? What does the part cost look like for the part that has two different attributes or lengths? And then she came back later and said, hey, I wasn't patient enough. You answered it.
Yeah, we are using. We're using lot FIFO and lot average, depending on the part. Manufactured or finished good type parts, we're using lot average. And for being a primary steel, I've got to get used to this too. Apparently the price of steel changes depending on when you ship it. So the accounting side is beating me up trying to make sure that works. So we are using that lot averaging, and I do, well, if I went back to lot tracker, I can show you that, I think so. So here's our part number, and if we come over to activity and costs, right? So here's our Detroit site, and so we're using, again, the lot FIFO, so we have our 40 cents in here. So
and I'm not sure if Graham was referencing the kinetic forms or referencing the classic with this question. How are the forms supporting the advanced UOM values? So in the kinetic, it didn't look like it was too difficult, or in the classic, it didn't look like it, you still had to bounce from the tabs. How is that as far as, is this working in the kinetic as well?
More meaning the actual printed forms, like how does your purchase order look with these attributes on it? What do you tell the vendor?
Yes, there's options on a lot of the new forms to print attributes or not. So that's a good question. And let's see if I
Because I
can.
ran down the wrong rabbit hole with your question.
And of course, I probably, oh, here it is, PO entry. So if I go to PO entry and the form as an example, right? What we found is that the RDDs are updated for this attribute set, and you have this, a lot of these forms have this print inventory attribute option. And so if we pull that up,
Do you know if that print attribute is on the classic form, Brad? I don't remember that in 10.2.700, so I'm wondering if they added it to the classic.
At some point, I will say, and I don't know if it was the spring or the fall version, at some point for Kinetic, this is what we get by default. So we're just using the Kinetic print forms exclusively. So I don't know if that was the spring update of this year or the fall update, but I'm not using any of the classic forms, so I don't even know. Of course, I can't print this one because it's pending. So to go into my PO approval and sorry. I think I can be Tom because, yeah, here it is. Just gonna, where's my approval? Here we go, accept. There we go. So try this again. It is a good question though, because a lot of the forms have been updated for this purpose. So what you'll find is this attribute set down here will print out like that. And so one of the things that we have started to look at is we actually want the number of pieces on there too. Some of the forms we've added pieces to this, so now I know the length, but it doesn't give me the calculation as far as how many pieces. So that's kind of what that looks like.
Now, before you
And you can
close
see
that
this
screen there, Brad,
yeah.
Craig Kutnick had a question also with the advanced UOM. Would that help with the dual UOMs for subcontract where you send out pounds, but they treat it in eaches or vice versa? Heat treating is going to go by pounds, but you send pieces. Would that work for you there as well?
We have our standard unit of measure would do that conversion, and our standard unit of measure setup in our custom one that we have.
So your service unit of measure class already handles converting that.
Yeah, did I close the issue? I think I did. So one of the things that, like issuing material, I don't know if we got another job or not. Yeah, okay. I think I used my jobs up. Just pull this one back up, I think. There we go. I have all of my units of measure out of the standard units of measure. I have all these available. So, I mean, I could issue in pounds, if I wanted to. Again, somebody would have to do that kind of calculation. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but to me, that would probably be built in there. What I've seen on the subcontract, we did do a job on the subcontract, if I can find it.
Or the subcontract shipping?
Mm-hmm. I think it was this one. We just got done with a week of testing, so I think this is it. Nope, of course not. Oh, this is it. Okay. So this is a subcontract as it happens, this job that I've been messing with. And let's see if I go, trying to remember where it's at. So when we did the material, we issued the material, and somewhere in here is oh, here, transactions down here, sorry. So for subcontract, we're doing this as pieces. So we had to issue these as pieces, right? So in this job, you know, if I go back to this detail, I'm making pieces here, okay? But if you had your dual units of measure set up and you were doing this in your dual unit of measure setup, I think you could change that and convert back and forth. We are not going to do that as our plan, but I think that would be possible. And I think if I go back to here, when I do this dual, I think it would depend how you set this dual unit of measure listing up, right? So we do have pounds in here. Now, you know, this would have to be, well, how's that converting, you know? So if you have all the same materials, the same density, we didn't enter anything there. So that I'm not sure if that goes back to the standard unit of measure class to do that or not. I mean, this is a question we haven't pursued this, so. Does that make sense?
It could also be part specific where you're sending a 1.5 pounds per part.
Yep, I can see that.
X parts, and that'll tell us how many pounds are going out as well.
Right. So if I pull this one up, pounds are part specific, exactly what you're saying. Yep. So.
Yep. Next question is from Chance Finley. What's been your experience with using fulfillment workbench and ordering from stock? Do you have issues with it allocating orders in multiple lots when your customer is looking for a continuous run? They order 100 feet of cable, you have 2 lots of one 500, one 750. Will Epicor still allocate anyway for prevent or allowance for an overage?
We have not done the allocation side. We are using order fulfillment workbench. I don't even know if I have anything open here. Oh, we do. Okay. So here's an example. So this has got an attribute set on it, right? In this case. So there you go. Lucky from the testing side. So if I have, what we have been doing is selecting this, and all we've been doing is doing a reserve and release for picking. So we have not been doing a full allocation like that. So I don't know the answer to your question, but so this is our procedure, is to do this reserve and release for picking. So if I do that on this one, it must maybe already been here. Yeah, it gave me an error. So 100%. It didn't let me pick that, so but it reserved it. That's kind of funny. It usually works smoother than that. I don't know why that didn't work. So then for us, we're picking the lot with the sales order pick list. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. So yeah, it's still not doing, something's goofy with this one. Any other questions?
Yep. Next one from Tim Lester. Did you attempt to use the UOM conversions for inventory at feet or inches, sales as eaches or pieces, purchasing eaches or pieces? Just curious on what made you use the advanced UOM and attributes instead of just doing the UOM conversions.
It's that pieces. So if I exit here, so what this doesn't tell us, so this order of 500, it doesn't do any calculations for me as far as how many pieces. So for people on the shop floor, you know, I've got 500 feet, but you know, you can't go out and grab a 500-foot piece, right? So how many pieces am I grabbing? That calculation was always being done manually, and this will actually tell them, you know, this is a 20-foot part. I've got 500, so now it's going to do the math to tell them, you know, we'll pull whatever it is, 20 pieces or 25 pieces or whatever that works out to. So that's the advantage we are seeing. And again, to get that functionality, we were setting up dozens of customizations to get that piece type of customization or functionality. So for us, that was a core item we had to work with in this industry. So we had done literally, it was 12 to 14 customizations of screens. And so this then came out 3 months later. So all those customizations were done and tested last summer. This module came out in the fall. Our project went on hold because of COVID, and we said, oh my gosh, we got to look at this. If we can peel off that many customizations and being in the cloud and all of our updates, you know, minimizing our customization footprint was pretty important to us. So that's why we went this route. And it actually does a nicer job with the calculations than our customizations did. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yep, I think that definitely makes sense. You turned around and retired some customizations, kept it back to base product, added on the extra feature, but you're able to do it now in the base system without having to do any customization to get that calculations performed for your users and make sure that they know, pull this many pieces, not this many feet.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're a couple minutes early, literally 2 minutes early. Are there any other questions here for Brad? And now that you've done a few presentations, Brad, we're going to request that you do these every quarter, and then your skills will be perfect.
Yeah, I would say one gotcha that I have found, and Epicor says they're working on this. I went back to an older part because we've been testing for a year. I did go back to an older part number, and 249 as an example. This was our favorite part last year. If I go to transaction history, you know, with testing, it's like, do you start over? What do you do? We did not start over with a fresh database this year. This had transactions, a lot of transactions from last year. I could not change this part to be inventory tracked. So that is a gotcha that I certainly went back to Epicor and I said, hey, unless you're a brand new deployment like we are, that's going to be a problem. And they said, yeah, that we know that we are working on that. And so that's a pretty big gotcha if you are already live and you are buying this module that I didn't want to leave out. So I'm sure some of you are familiar with this part unit measure conversion screen. So there is no way right now to convert, like with this screen, you can't convert attributes. You can't convert a part number to an attribute style part number if it has part transactions on it. So I went back and I deleted as many jobs and quotes and sales orders and all that kind of stuff in the test database that I could. And so we're not able to convert all of our part numbers that we wanted. Now we're building a new pilot database as we speak. So we'll make sure our pilot database is set up clean, and then we'll use that as a clean database with the part setups that we want. So to me, that was a pretty big gotcha from Epicor's side, and it was, for me, it was like, oh, by the way, I found it. They didn't tell me that ahead of time. So
That may be an issue since a lot of people in the user group meeting are also, they're existing with a whole lot of part history and data.
yeah, I would definitely ask that. They said they were working on a process. I gotta think it would be like that part unit measure conversion type of process. So that would be a biggie.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? We'll give it just a few seconds. Okay.
Anything with transaction history is usually limited, especially unit of measures, and that came in from Kyle.
Yeah, that's why I think it probably is lumped in with this part unit of measure conversion. I can see why they limited it, but they didn't have any way. It's not on this screen, so they didn't update this screen to allow you to do that conversion. So it's a pretty big hole right now if you're live and you.
If you go to the kinetic version, does it show up on there? Because you're looking at the classic.
Support just said they're working on it, so
Okay.
that's all I. I haven't looked here. You're right. So,
Like they said, classic is not getting updated. Only kinetics.
No. Good question. So, I haven't checked here. Yeah, I don't see any attribute items here.
No. Okay.
Good question, though.
All right, I'm gonna throw up a poll real quick. If anybody's learned stuff about UOM and they think it would be beneficial going forward. I'll leave that up for a few minutes till about 12, and then I'll throw up the poll about how big is your team. We will be resuming to cover BAQs with Graham Ross.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And go ahead and fill out the poll.
So a lot of folks aren't sure, or they think advanced UOM will be beneficial for them. How many people are helping you support Epicor at your location?
And that's not fair. Even the Lone Ranger had Tonto.
Well, true. Maybe I should have had Lone Ranger and Tonto be 1 to 2 people. So the majority of people are small team or single on their own. That's why groups like this are a big help for those Lone Rangers. It's nice to have a couple people to bounce ideas off of, but not always possible in every situation.